So, Dr. Keith Franklin, thank you for joining us today in the hot seat. And we're going to talk today a little bit about your work here in the Embassy on the nuclear side. But let me start, Keith, by saying, how is it that somebody from the National Nuclear Lab gets to work in the British Embassy in Tokyo?
Yeah, well, it's a sequence of events, really. A number of years ago, I spent a couple of years in Japan working at a laboratory in Tokaimura in Ibaraki-ken. And after the events of March 2011, the Embassy asked the National Nuclear Lab if they could provide somebody, just for a short period of time, to provide support in the aftermath of that, in particular to look at ways in which the UK can help Japan recover from the incident. Given my previous experience in Japan, I was the one who ended up coming out.
Looked at from an export to Japan perspective, what opportunities does this whole nexus of issues offer to British companies?
The UK has actually got the most developed decommissioning industry in the world, and it comes from the fact that we started first. Some of the work we did, because we were the first to do it, we've ended up with some challenges from the past, from some of the experimental work, etc., things we need to deal with, particularly at Sellafield, things at Dounreay, things at some of the Magnox sites, but we've been there and done that. We've gone for a UK approach, using the good offices of the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, and we've spent time explaining to the Japanese authorities how our system works, how it is a national system, and how that promotes innovation and SMEs to get involved in the market. People have got that now and actually are turning to the UK, and actually, rather than us having to force ourselves upon them, coming to us and asking us for advice. So the view in Japan now is that if it's decommissioning expertise and it comes from the UK, there's a good chance that it's actually worth listening to.
Are there any success stories you can point us towards? I mean, the kind of companies who have been successful. I mean, I know it's still early days.
So the type of companies that have been successful are ones who, for want of a better word, provide a gadget. It's not to say that the opportunities are only just for gadget makers, but in the initial stages, nuclear decommissioning is a long-term game. And the strategy is that at the very beginning, it's easier to explain, I've got a magic hoover that does something, than it is to explain how your consultancy service might be able to help. So the companies who have been successful initially have had something that's easy to explain, hits a problem that TEPCO and Japan have, and that's the important thing. There's lots of information out there. If you're thinking of coming to Japan, find out what the real problems are. Don't imagine what the problems are and then come. Find out what the real problems are and find out if your gadget or your technology just hits it. And the ones that have been successful have been the kind of right product at the right time. Sounds like any business really, but just hitting on that button. There's information available on the web how to find out what the latest problem is. If you look at the nuclear bit on the Export to Japan website, that's the best place to start. But just to give you some examples, you'll have seen a lot in the press about contaminated water. Sometimes from a technical point of view, the needs are more driven by the politics at the moment. But if you have something that helps with the water, fuel debris removal is another one. The priorities do change slightly, and there's a roadmap showing you at what stage different needs come up. But it's worthwhile, if anybody's watching this, to check the website and see what the latest issues are. Coming through the embassy in the first instance is a really good idea. Coming through the Export to Japan website, finding out what the connections are. We've made the connections for you. You don't have to just come to Japan cold, try to work out who it is you need to speak to, because to be honest with you, there are a myriad of companies in Japan, and sometimes it's difficult. Should I be speaking to Hitachi or TEPCO or maybe the government? I'm not exactly sure which one it is. We can guide you through that maze and tell you whether or not actually it's worth spending time making the most of the opportunity, or whether actually whatever you've got isn't actually going to work in Japan, and it's worth knowing that as well.